Hello, everybody, and welcome to Late Night News. Thank you for indulging us and giving us an extra week to get things together. But we are here now, and we are live, and I'm real excited about that. And I'm real excited to have my partner back. She's here, everybody. My co-anchor, Miss Venessa, to say hello.
Hello.
And we're real excited. We've got a really good show for you. Mr. SM Hillman's going to jump in here with a little bit of something from his neck of the woods, and then we have a marketing tip from CL Cannon, and we're going to go over the indie author survey by World Word Media, written word
media. Words are hard, man.
Words are hard, yeah. But yeah, and we're going to go over all of that, and we also have some news, including how we're going to start today. Miss Venessa, you want to start us off and tell us a little bit about what's going on with Ingram Spark?
Yeah, AI, y'all. We're talking about AI again. All right, so Ingram, and it's not even Ingram Spark, it's Ingram, has sent a letter to their independent publishers. But not all, if any, indie authors who are using Ingram Spark, that they will give the publishers an opportunity to opt out of Ingram allowing AI tech firms to purchase physical copies of their books. Now, they can't always know what firms are anticipating using these physical copies of books for large language model learning, but they will endeavor to do their very best. The letter they sent out, they basically said that LLM companies are increasingly purchasing physical books and other media, potentially for the purpose of scanning and gasp. These purchases may occur in the US under the right of first sale, which basically says when you purchase a physical thing, it is yours to do with what you wish. Which is why we can, sell our books secondhand, right? Our physical books. We can do that. That makes sense. Technically, legally, it's a huge gray area, which is why there are 80 lawsuits in the courts right now. But they go on further to say, at Ingram, we are committed to transparency and to honoring our clients' preferences, which we do appreciate. I know I'm being a little flippant about this, but we do appreciate that. While we may not know the purpose of a given transaction, we will make reasonable efforts to honor your wishes. If you would like to opt out of Ingram knowingly selling your products directly to AI companies for model training purposes, please complete this form. You know who didn't get that letter? Me?
Or me.
Right. So I think who they're sending this to are actually just publishers that use the Ingram distribution system. I don't know any. Now, I haven't asked every indie author I know. Jesus, that would take years. But I have not received any kind of communication like that. And I do publish my books through Ingram Spark. And I went into my Ingram Spark account to see if there was any mention of it anywhere in my account or anywhere in the help files. And was there any mention? No. So I don't know what that means for us. Anita also hasn't received any emails. Yeah. So like I said, I suspect that is currently just for publishing entities. Let's call them that. So I think I am going to send them a little letter and ask them what they think, and I will let you guys know what they say. But I'm not done yet, Joe. I got a little bit more.
Yeah.
So out of the UK, to shift to the other side of the pond, the Society of Authors, the Association of Illustrators, and a handful of other professional organizations in the arts released a report arguing that unless the UK government implements a regulatory framework for generative AI development, I'm so sick of talking about AI, the jobs of authors, illustrators, musicians, performers, and photographers are at serious risk. And the report is entitled Brave New World, Justice for Creators in the Age of Gen AI. And there's a lot of data in this. And Joe and I are going to go through this. And I think next month, maybe, we are going to do, we're going to do a much larger segment about it, because I really want to get into these numbers. This was not on my radar kind of soon enough for us to really get into that. But I did want to just touch on it and give you guys some information about it. The report really highlights how people in the creative sector have already suffered economic losses due to AI companies using their content without consent or payment. To prevent things from getting worse, the trade associations behind the report call on the government to set a global standard for ethical, human-centered generative AI deployment with the implementation of a new regulatory framework they call CLEAR. The acronym calls for emphasis on creator consent, licensing schema, ethical use of training data, accountability around how copyright-protected works have been used, and remuneration and rights. They maintain that the CLEAR framework, quote, reflects what creators are asking for, not a rejection of technology, but clear rules that allow innovation to develop in a way that respects their creative work. And that's something like I've been saying all along. I love the idea of AI. I think it is like it can be used in so many ways and benefit people in so many instances in our lives, right? But it is not ethical at its core, and that's the problem. There's a quote, and just to finish this up, there's a quote at the beginning of the foreword of this report that I think really encompasses this entire issue from the standpoint of creators. She said, while ministers speak publicly of balance and patience, they have failed to explain why global AI corporations worth billions should be granted privileged access to the cultural assets of this country without permission, payment, or accountability, while individual UK creators are asked by their own government to sacrifice their futures. And I just think that encompasses everything that at least I, as a creator, and I would say most of the creators I know, that's the issue we have, you know, and y'all are, I mean, we're all on the same page about this, I think. But like, I love the idea of using AI, but yeah. And Nita says AI has potential, but the way it's been fast-tracked has left it as a flawed, unethical mess. Exactly. Yeah. So we're going to dig much more into the data, and they have hard data. They've surveyed thousands of people across creative spectrums. They have sections on authors, a section on musicians, a section on visual artists. And so we want to kind of make that, into a more digestible form, even though and we will give the link to the report itself as well in that segment next month. Yeah. So look forward to that, y'all. We'll get into it.
Yeah, if we didn't have the media survey to break down, which is going to take up most of our time today, then we'll do the same for next month with this particular doctrine. I'm going to call it a doctrine because that's what it looks like. So
yeah, and I don't think any of us are going to be super surprised by what's in there, but it does have really impactful numbers and conclusions. Yeah. So I think it'll be good.
To go back to what Ingram's doing, I think what they're doing is very clearly a legal resistance to keep them from being sued for what's going on.
You know? I mean, I think that's certainly part of it. I try not to there are certain companies that I think the worst of regardless, but I try to, generally speaking, not think the worst. And everything's layered, right? it's very rare that any of us make a decision based on one criteria or one reason. You know, there are lots of things, everything's connected. And I don't want to say that, like, I don't want to say that they're doing it only to cover their ass, although that's probably a big piece of it. But I also do think, I mean, authors and publishers are their customers.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, you know, I mean,
and it's a divided issue. So.
Yeah, exactly. And it would have been very useful if they'd have done this 2 years ago. That would have been better. But you know what I did do earlier today when I had 15 minutes at home in between running all over Atlanta, is I actually pulled up ChatGPT, which I do not do very often. And I said, I'm an author and yes, it saves time and money for them. That's exactly right. But it's also at the detriment. Anyway, I pulled up ChatGPT and I said, I'm an author and I do not want AI companies to use my work without compensation. So give me 3 things that I can do. I want them to be actionable items and I want them to be preventative in nature. I do not want them to, I don't want it to be, oh, they used my stuff. Now what do I do? I want it to make it attractive for them to use my work. And what it told me was to, on my copyright page, to update my copyright page to include purchasing this book does not give you the rights. I mean, it's better language, but basically purchasing this book I do not convey the right to use, you know, I am not, you know, you cannot use it to train AI. You cannot use it. It is not for data accumulation or whatever. I don't remember. But I figure, and it gave me 3. It was that one of them was also about the website. If you have any of your written content on your website, including samples, and as well as, of course, blog articles, to make sure that you have something that shows, like, and make it prominent, make it at the top of the page, or make it a pop-up as soon as they come to a page, or whatever. Maybe not a pop-up, those are so annoying. But making it very clear that you do not consent to them using your work, period. Because then they see that and they're like, okay, this person is covering their ass legally. Yeah. So if they're going through all this trouble to tell us this, they're probably not just going to let it slide if we do it. You know, it makes it less attractive for them to do it. So.
And when I mentioned about Ingram covering their ass, I don't think that's a bad idea. I think it's a smart move. So, you know, it saves their company tons of litigation that they probably can't afford. So.
Yeah. For sure. And I honestly, it's very rarely that I blame anyone or any company for wanting to cover their ass.
Right.
Except for certain companies. And I don't think they should exist.
Especially if they do it after the fact, which is the fun part about like Spotify and those who have had this problem, right? So. Yes.
Anita.
I put an AI clause in my copyright notice of my latest book, plus a medieval curse against the knights.
I will also say, if you already and Ingram has changed. They used to charge you every time you updated a book, like the interior of a book, but they've stopped doing that. So all your old books that, you know, all the ones you've done, just add a new copyright page. And obviously I'm not just aiming this at Anita. I mean, like everyone, all of your backlist, just work through it. I know if people who are much more prolific than I am, it'll be like, oh my God, that's exhausting. You know, just do, 1 or 2 books a week. Yeah. You know, you've already got the text, just,
Totally.
All right. Yeah.
Well, along those lines, we do have a victory in a copyright essence. A historical ruling has been placed and brought down from a U.S. federal appeals court. It could mean that songwriters will have a legal pathway to terminate copyright deals and reclaim their rights, not just in the U.S., but globally. In a common industry practice, termination clauses in music copyright contracts have not been applied on a global basis. But the U.S. Appeals Court of the Fifth Circuit argues that since termination intended to balance bargaining power excluding deals made abroad infringes on artists' ability to exercise their full rights. This ruling was preceded by a lower court decision involving a 1963 song, Double Shot of My Baby's Love by Cyril Vetter. This week's decision rewards Vetter with a full global rights back to him and the song. And Vetter was represented by the Loyola University professor Tim Capel, and a nationally recognized expert in music and copyright law and a longtime advocate for songwriters' rights. He mentions that we knew from the start that we had a law on our side, even though we felt it had been misapplied for decades. Now, songwriters will be able to recapture the full scope of what they gave away, which is what we think Congress intended to happen. They get back exactly what they gave away and nothing less. Cheryl Kennedy Heidel, Dean of the College of Music and Media at Loyola, said she is incredibly proud of Capel's victory in the Fifth Court, noting that his work brings an extraordinary real-world impact into the classrooms. Our students now have the rare opportunity to learn from a professor whose work is shaping copyright law at the highest level. This landmark decision exemplifies the caliber of faculty and education at Loyola. So she was kind of piggybacking on that.
Hey, turning it into marketing. I'm down. I'm down.
That being said, like many songwriters of the era, Vetter and Smith signed publishing agreements and transferred ownership and control of the song to the music publisher Winsong Music for just $1. Imagine that. At the time, songwriters had little bargaining power and limited understanding of long-term value of their work. Decades later, U.S. copyright gave songwriters a second chance under the law's termination rights provision. Authors can reclaim their own works after a set number of years, even if they previously signed those rights away. This is happening a lot in television now, too. A lot of Disney product and a lot of old TV shows who lost their copyrights have been reclaiming them, nice. Especially the people who are still alive to, like Mr. Cyril here, Mr. Vetter, to do that. And so in 2022, the American broadcasting companies approached Vetter about licensing Double Shot for use in a television show that would be broadcast and streamed worldwide. The Resnick Music Group, which bought the rights to the song from Winsong, claimed it still owned a partial interest in the song outside the U.S., and that Vetter's copyright termination only applied within the U.S. This conflicting claim in ownership led Vetter to file this lawsuit in federal court and claim his worldwide ownership rights to the song. So that's what started this little battle, Capel said. As it turns out, it's been a common industry understanding of how renewal rights and termination rights work for 50 years or more. This case was about essentially upending what we consider to be questionable but long-standing industry practice. We were successful in getting the district court to agree with us, and that language of that statute did not impose a geographical restriction. Notable supporters of this included the Authors Guild, Songwriters Guild of America, and SAG-AFTRA. Yes, all the unions were very happy about all this. And it's about maintaining control of the work, Capel said. As the owner of the copyright, you get to decide how the work is used and not used. And you get to retain 100% of that revenue, as opposed to 20%, 30%, 50%. So it's all about control. It's all about revenue. But really what it's about is fairness. This is what Congress wanted. So that's I think this is, obviously landmark in that respect. And it goes on, talking about how much this is going to change the world and everything like that.
And, can I just jump in here real quick? Yeah. And this goes back to the forward of that report. Mm-hmm. And Baroness Beban Kidron, who is the person who wrote the forward, she said, copyright is not a technical inconvenience. It is the mechanism that allows creators to earn a living and retain control over the meaning and integrity of their work. Remove it, and you do not merely damage an industry, you dismantle the conditions under which culture itself can exist. And I think that just, like that case, kind of really upholds that idea.
What it also holds for me, and this is interesting too, because, oftentimes when you're a filmmaker and you're looking at rights to acquire rights of something, especially something as that's a little bit older and hasn't had circulation in a while. You have to go. What used to be the protection of this was that the person who created the copyright, the person who owned the copyright, in case of their passing, they would put in their will to set up a trust or a society in which their family members would decide whether or not somebody could utilize their copyrighted material, right? And so what this is basically saying is that the person who owns it is the person responsible for it, and however they just deem it to be allocated is up to them. And so I think there's precedence for an idea of the option of where you can put this past that aspect of it, right? So if you were to pass away, you could essentially label this as you could use this as long as you use it for this purpose, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Because like the interest, like the rights to that thing passes to your heirs, whoever you've named, and they still like they get to decide, like the creator, like the original owner, the original creator, they get to do that. And I think that so many industries that worked with creative people in the past, particularly in the music industry, but I think it was probably prevalent in many industries, but I think it was really, really bad in the music industry, is that the companies took complete advantage of the creators of the work. It was so predatory in the mid 1900s, right? The middle of the last century, the 40s, 50s, 60s. It was so predatory. And
it took the Hendrix family almost their entire life to get their rights back from what RCA did to Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah. So. And I think, honestly, Taylor Swift was super smart. How she just re-recorded all her albums.
Right. Yeah, she had a vision.
That.
Yeah, very, very smart.
I mean, that was, I don't know that anybody had thought to do that prior. So that was just brilliant on her part, I thought. And hey, Sean's here.
Sean's here, and just in time to see himself on screen. Because Mr. Hillman, we're kind of paying homage to what Mr. Hillman does over on his side of the world here at Go Indie Now, and in his Zero Means Your Dad, he's been doing the shows live, and this is he saved this little bit for our show today to give you an idea of what he does over there at Zero Means Your Dead when he does his live show. And so this is a little preview of that, and gives you an idea of what you can expect when you watch Zero Means Your Dead. And then we'll be back to break down the author's survey, which is what everybody's waiting for. So here we go.
From Manor Lords to Against the Storm to Terra Invicta, indie publisher Hooded Horse has enjoyed an incredible run since it was founded in 2019, with a bunch of big successes under its belt. You might expect CEO Tim Bender to be looking to expand, swelling up more and more indie games to increase his chances of finding another hit. But not only is he completely uninterested in publishing more than around 10 games a year, focusing on stability over growth, his advice to indie developers is to avoid indie publishers entirely. People can hate me for this if they want, he says, but most indie publishers are not people who developers should work with. The vast majority of indie publishers in their whole structure are predatory and opportunistic. Hooded Horse has been one of the most successful indie publishers of video games over the last few years. To criticize other publishers could be seen as a marketing move, or maybe a company holding a grudge. But the information in the interview suggests Bender is telling developers to do some research into the publisher they are dancing with before committing. This is likely good advice across the board, and Hooded Horse thus far has a track record of success in focusing on fewer games rather than trying to churn out as many games a month as possible. Like advice from any CEO, it is smart to consider their words in light of their own actions and successes or lack thereof. Now, back to Joe and Venessa.
So the first Wednesday of every month, you can see Mr. Sean Hillman, Mr. SM Hillman, on Zero Means You're Dead Live. And he does that show with all the indie news that you can possibly talk about RPGs. And he has segments with interviews that he produces, and also new releases that you can get on gaming and everything like that. So definitely check that show out. Again, first Wednesday of every month. So live at 8 p.m. Eastern. So that being said,
I have an old lady cat here.
Yeah.
If I didn't, there she is. If I didn't pick her up and brush her, she would have sat back here going meow the whole time.
Which would have been interesting. It's when we go through some numbers here, but this is the third year that this program has broken this exact survey down. This is the second time that Venessa and I have done it together, and so it's very interesting every year. And this is the written word media survey of indie authors. This year, they did 1,300 responses from indie authors around the world. 96 of the respondents were already published and 4% were not. The survey skews towards serious, prolific indie authors. That's their audience. And all the data is self-reported, especially income. They say, as always, correlation does not equal causation. And when they say higher earners tend to, they're describing, if you do this one thing, you'll get rich. They're not saying if you do this one thing, you'll get rich. They're describing patterns, not guarantees. So this survey is covering everything from income to catalog size to email lists. And we're going to go over all of it here, including the very first survey, which is how authors are published in 2025. And feel free to jump in, Venessa, if you have some thoughts on any of this. This is the indie author community continues to thrive. 77% of respondents identify as self-publishing. Last year it was 66, so it's gone up. While 17% describe themselves as hybrid authors, last year it was 9, so that also went up. And only 5% remain fully in traditional published camp. I don't think they published that. I could not find that response from last year's survey.
I think that's really interesting, because I think it tells us I think it tells us two things. I think it tells us that there are many more indie published authors, people who are just not even going for traditional publishing. But I think it's also telling us that there are a lot of traditional authors that are going indie, and indie authors that are branching out into traditional publishing as well, which I think is really interesting.
I'm going to reach out to to these guys and ask them for next year to distinguish between small press and big five in terms of what they traditionally publish it, because this does not encompass that number. It doesn't,
or we don't know how it encompasses that number. We don't know if they're counting small presses as traditional publishers, which they are usually, or if they're considered indie, which for some reason small publishers have decided they're indie publishers.
Yeah.
Which is dumb, because they've always been independent. Like, the idea that it's a publisher means it's independent from other publishers. It's kind of already there.
Here's you and I have had this argument and conversation 1,000 times. But here's my assessment of that aspect of why they do that. Is they're independent from corporate rule. Nobody makes the decisions but them, and that's where Simon & Schuster have board members, and in some respects, I don't know if any of them are public, so they don't have stockholders maybe, but they have conglomerate people who bankroll them.
But my problem is that self-published authors were already calling themselves indie publishers.
Understood. And I agree with you on that.
When small presses decided they wanted that term, which is no freaking different than when big publishers decide they want something and they just
That's very true. That's very true. Let's digress, and we'll
I just have feels about that. That's all.
But this is no longer Plan B. It's a primary intentional path, and the people of this survey listed controlling rights, pricing, and packaging, moving faster than traditional cycles, and experimenting with series, direct sales, and special editions as some of the primary reasons as to why they've chosen the path they've chosen. So that's very interesting as well. Then we get into the motivation. What drives the indie authors? When asked about their primary motivation for publishing a book, authors offered a wide range of responses, as usual, with less than half of them focused on financial goals, which is very interesting given this economy.
But what was it? Well, yes, but less than half, but more than every other one.
Mm-hmm.
More than every other response.
Yeah. And 40% said they want to make money. That's what they said. That was exactly their drive. 20% indicated that they want their story to be told. And 60% said they wanted to become a well-known author. 15% stated writing is a hobby that they enjoy. And 9% selected other, with a unique mixture of unique and alternative motivations not captured by the main categories. Mm-hmm. So 9% is pretty high for an other category, though.
Yeah, no, I would agree.
So then we get into how much are authors earning selling books per month. And the majority of them are under $100. In fact, here, let me grab the number so that I can give you.
I'm going to mute myself real quick.
Mm-hmm. So 44% of authors are earning less than $100, or $100 or less, I should say. Then the majority are 56%, earning over $100 monthly for their writing. Authors in the 500 to 5,000 range make up about 20%, and authors in the 5,000 per month account for 13%. 8% of authors who answered the survey reported making over 10,000. That is a jump from a year ago. A year ago, it was like 3% were 10,000. 5% was I remember 6 or 7%, but the majority, or the one that was the middle one that we were talking about last year, we mentioned, was the 500 to 999 category. That one was where the $1,000 to $499 $400.
Yeah.
So that is shifted. That has changed. So.
Yeah, which I think is super cool, because that I like to think, I like to believe now that a lot of the people who were doing the 500 to 999 last year are now doing the 1,000 to 49.99, which I think.
Yeah, you would hope that's the case, right? So
yeah. I mean, right, exactly. That's what I believe.
And the number of under 100 went down. Last year, it was still the majority, but it was like 58% or something like that. So that number also went down.
I think that shows that indie authors are getting smarter and better at pivoting when we need to pivot, trying new things, trying different things, doing different stuff to get success. I think that's really cool.
And that goes along with what the category 4 was, which is, again, equating the amount of books you publish versus the amount you're making. And this is a very interesting one because, oftentimes it has always been the adage that with more books, you make more money. I mean, it's just, but authors with 1 to 3 books, about 80% of them fall into the $100 or $100 under $100 a month category.
That makes
5
sense.
to 9 books, they're more. The medium income jumps to around $50 a month, and many more enter the 100 to 1,000 band. Authors with 10 books or plus are the ones that are seeing the steeper income. The medium income for those are $3,000 a month. 40% of them earn $5,000 plus a month. And then the very high earners, it's just a lot of books is what they listed. So.
Yeah, and that makes sense with what we were just talking about, that a lot of the authors are shifting to the next higher bracket, and it's most likely because also they are continuing to write books, so now they have more of a back catalog.
Yeah, and back catalogs do garner more of a steadier revenue stream than
Because
forward.
if you have more products, you have more opportunities to sell, so you will make more money. I mean, it makes total sense.
And then they ask which format you're publishing in, which is another interesting category. You know, last year we had prognosticated last year that hardback and collector's edition were, and in fact, collector's edition was not even on the survey last year. This is a new category that they've added in. So they might have been watching our show because we said something about that. Yeah. We said something about are they going to include collector's edition as hardbacks? And here they've separated the two and shown you a difference. And yes, they are on. Hardback is definitely on the rise from a year ago. I mean, it wasn't even 10%. According to the survey last year, and now they are saying that they most 36% have an hardcover. 36%, sorry.
Yeah, and most collector's editions are hardcovers also. So the total hardcovers are going to be probably 40% or more, really, if you add collector's edition in there too.
And it's no surprise paperback and ebooks are still neck and neck with one another in that respect. But here's the interesting one for me, Venessa. 51% of the people surveyed in this survey have said they at least have one audiobook out there. That is incredible considering the cost of audiobooks and hardbacks, right?
But it makes sense though, because audiobooks have become a normal way for modern people to read, because we're always traveling, we're always moving, we're in the car, we're on transit, we're, you know, and we never have enough time to do everything. So if you can read a book while you're, you know, cleaning the house or doing laundry or driving to wherever you're going, like, it makes sense. You know, you're multitasking, you're able to do, and there's such a demand for audiobooks. So I'm not at all surprised that this has increased, because I think authors are consistently doing everything they can to try to get audiobooks out there because they are so in demand. Like every time I vend at a very well attended event, like maybe a Comic-Con, you know, those are bigger events or bigger conventions, I always have multiple people who ask if my books are out in audiobook. So, I mean,
how much do you equate that number though? Because this is where my mind went to right away, to like a sound booth theater who are making it a lot more affordable for indie authors to do audiobooks.
Well, I would also say that I'm not sure your average indie author really knows about companies that do audiobooks. But I would probably also attribute at least part of the jump to AI narration. Because we're at that point where, you know, the year that these stats encompass, which is last year, we already had.
There's going to be some of that percentage in there. I think you're right. I also think people are learning how to do their own audiobooks too. And
yes. And I think that also, like on YouTube, it has become a way to create your audiobook is to read your audiobook on YouTube. Like there's like entire sort of like blueprints. I couldn't think of the word. I was like flowchart. No, that's not right. Blueprints to do audio on YouTube.
You know, it's funny. We do that every week on the This Week in Indies. So everybody reads on.
Yes, exactly.
So we're creating audiobooks as well.
Well, you're creating samples.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, and then the fun one, of course, is the genre. Again, no surprises here. I mean, this is almost mirror of last year.
Although I really do love that fantasy is so high.
Yeah. Thrillers have moved up a little bit. So is science fiction. But they're the only ones that really, and mystery. Actually, mystery jumped up, and I think you can. They separate cozy and mystery this year, which they didn't do last year.
Oh, yeah, nice.
So you can see what that it's a different category.
And the thing I find really interesting is that this is showing us trends.
Yeah.
Like the collector's editions and cozy mystery. We don't often see genre trends, like subgenre trends in these sorts of surveys, though, because cozy mystery is a subgenre, right? I don't see any other subgenre up there.
And to nobody's
not even historical fiction. That's its own genre as well.
And to nobody's surprise, the highest percentage of earners are in romance. 44% are making over 10K.
Romance authors are the first genre of authors that actually mastered indie publishing, period.
Mm-hmm.
They have been the forerunners since the beginning of ebooks, period. Sean asks, where is romantasy? And I think that's really interesting too.
Yeah, I think
they include romance, and I wonder if that because they're leaving it up to the respondent to decide.
So you think that might be skewing the fantasy number a little bit?
I think it's possible, for sure. I think it's possible. It really depends. I'm sure there are some respondents who said it was romance, and there are some respondents who said it was fantasy.
Yeah,
so that could definitely
they don't
account
differentiate
for
here. They do mention paranormal romance.
Oh yeah, they do. Yeah, they do have that. They do have that. But I will also say that it's also probable, since you can choose multiple genres, that people who write romantasy picked romance and fantasy in order to encompass that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe I would have to. I've never taken this survey, obviously.
No,
so
it would.
Well, the thing is, click on more than one.
You would have to be able to, because they're tossing in demographics along with genres. It would have to be a multi-choice question, because otherwise.
This is what I was going to say, that Sean beat me to it. I bet by next year.
I'm surprised we don't have romantasy now. I'm surprised too. Because it's been
that's been a big niche genre this year.
It's been a big niche genre for several years.
Yeah.
It's just it's peaking right now.
Yeah. And it's peaking. It's peaking right now because a lot of these romantasies are being turned into films and TV series as well. So you're seeing a lot 100%. More of that peak as well.
Yep.
All right. So then we go on to the revenue aspect of how the revenue is being generated, with, of course, Amazon still 83% being the dominant way people sell their books. As you can see, though, it's dropping every year. 91.
I think the KDP Select versus Wide is interesting.
That is very interesting as well. And when you're looking at sources, second most revenue for authors, Amazon still tops the list. But in in-person sales, Apple, Kobo, and direct sales were much more visible in the number 2 slot. How about that?
I love it.
But KDP versus Wide, 38% of authors. All my books are in KDP Select. And
that's down from last year, I think.
Yeah, it would not surprise you that those are the ones that have the higher revenue stream as well.
Sure.
30% are none of my books, and the rest are a mix. And I think a mix is probably most common.
Yeah.
And 43% of 43% of the 5,000 earners had their books in Select.
All their books, not just one book.
Yeah.
All their books.
So that means that 42% of them were mixed. So that's neck and neck. So you can't really glean anything from that.
Well, I think if you look at the KDP Select versus Wide, if you think about how it would be 38% all are in KDP, 30% none are in KDP, so 32% are a mix. That means KDP is a big deal for at least 70% of authors, right?
And I think we mentioned this last year, but I think again this is all genre driven in how you approach KU, because if you're and that skews this number a little bit, because if you're a romance author, you're in KU. Right?
Yeah, that's exactly what Anita just said too. But also, you also have to remember that over 50% of all books are romance. All books sold are romance books, so that makes total sense.
Yeah, so that's that. I mean, no, that didn't really change all that much.
Mm-hmm.
So cover design, interesting, is being reinforced as the number one factor in selling a book.
Sure.
Across experience levels and income tiers, book cover came out to be the top of what we asked what matters most for selling books.
Mm-hmm.
And how authors are spending on the covers. Lower earners, half are spending on covers.
Mm-hmm.
Many DIY using Canva templates are a helpful friend.
Mm-hmm.
I would be interested to see how that breaks down between the helpful friend and templates in Canva, because I'm going to guess it's 90-10. Mid-range earners typically invest $100 to $499 for their cover, which is that's where I lie in. That's
also same.
Often freelance designers, and that's how I utilize my covers as well. Freelance designers,
same.
Higher earners are spending at least $250, that's interesting to me.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't necessarily mean that they're spending $1,000 for cover. It's just they might be in the same range that I'm in.
Yeah, exactly.
And very few of those spend zero.
Yeah. So. I'll be interested. I hope next year they include using AI covers, because I would bet that a lot of the low earners, because if they pay, a lot of them are probably using AI. I'm not going to lie.
And
the ones that don't.
Anita spanked me here. She says, I'm one of those helpful friends. Don't knock it. My apologies. All right.
So, yeah.
All right.
And and I'm not knocking people who make their own or because like if you, especially when you're first starting out, so many authors are like, this is like very pie in the sky. It's like, this is what they've always wanted to do.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the money for it, you just don't have the money for it. Like there's literally nothing, like you can't get blood from a turnip, So like, I don't have any, like, I hope that they're not using AI, but I'm sure many of them are.
I would push back on Anita. If I'm paying you, you're a freelance designer. You're not a helpful friend. So,
Yeah, but she didn't say, she said
she would charge me.
She already defined herself as one of those helpful friends. So sit all the way down, Mr. Compton.
All right. So this again is the troubling status of the survey, and it's getting worse. Actually, nothing was about 28% last year, and Venessa. I'm going to give my partner here credit because she predicted this.
Mm-hmm.
She said this would go up this next year, and it did. It went up almost 10%.
Yep.
That is troubling to the nth degree.
And I attribute that to a couple things. I attribute that to things like Pro Writing Aid and Grammarly and stuff, not to them specifically because they've been around a long time, but because the word about them is getting out more, and also AI.
And I would think that the 0 to 49 per book, that would be that Pro Writing Aid subscription, right? That would be something like that.
Well, I mean, I don't think a lot of people count that in the same way. Most authors, if they create their covers in Canva, if they're doing a paid subscription to Canva, they're probably not counting that as how much they paid for their cover, right? I can't imagine that they would say that I'm paying this much for a cover, so I would think that the $0 to $49 per book, and even the $50 to $99 per book, are probably Fiverr people and stuff like that. That would be my guess.
Okay. So, again, no surprise, the higher earners, only 11 of them who reported said that they spend nothing. So most of them spend the 1,000 to the 2,000 range. So, and again, no surprise, the largest group of spend nothing on editing were the under 100 a month folks.
Yep. And again, I don't always, like, there are some people who can afford it who just won't, or they're not willing to put anything towards it. But there are some people who legitimately do not have anything. But again, you kind of reap what you sow with that. the same with the cover, Sean, yeah. And he also said he's going to be using the pick of a Joro spider that he specifically took for Orb Weaver, which is the new book he's working on. I think that's a great idea. Or a pre-made cover. Oh yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true. Yeah. Yeah, you can get, especially if you can get pre-mades on sale, you can absolutely get those for like, $49 per cover.
But Sean's point is very accurate. If you write a book in AI, you get AI to edit it. Yeah,
that's true. That's true.
All right, and then so from there, authors' marketing tactics and effectiveness, and this is another interesting survey that is kind of polarized. 1 being least effective to 5 being most effective. So those are them. So when you see those numbers, that's the author's mailing list. Again, old school tactics.
Yes.
Never do you wrong, right?
Yes.
So 3.3. That's about where it was last year. Other sites are catching up though. BookBub and Freebies, Booksies.
Free Booksy. They've got they're like BookBub ads, but significantly cheaper, but also a lot smaller in terms of audience. But they can be effective. But the trick with doing things like that are to and Free Booksy is one that is actually run by Written Word Media, which is why they name dropped it. But those are most effective when you do a whole bunch like in the same week, because that gives you a lot more longevity in it. So
the interesting thing to me here is, the ads part all took a hit this year. They were all up higher last year, not by much, but they were higher. But the newsletter swaps, that's a new category they put in there, and it's at the bottom of the list. Yeah, that was not in the survey last year. They just, so that's interesting to me that only half of people think it's halfway effective. So
yeah, and I wonder about that. Like I wonder if they, because in my experience with newsletter swaps, they're hit or miss, of course. But if you're targeting them correctly, I feel like there are some authors, especially authors who are smaller, like newer, or have smaller backlists, or are still learning. They sometimes try to kind of carpet bomb, instead of tactically choosing.
The survey does list the less effective in previous years, possibly due to overuse and less engaged lists. So people who are utilizing the newsletter swaps that aren't actually doing the work.
Yeah, they're not necessarily curating and finding newsletters that are both active and focus on the genre that they write, know? So yeah. And so I mean I think that you can't take a lot of the all of these stats as hard and fast, just like they warn you not to, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
So this is what the actual spending is going on through marketing. How much they spend on marketing each month across all respondents. The average monthly spend was $636. But that average hides a big spread. On the average, authors in each income bracket reported spending over $4,500 if you're in the 10,000 bracket. If you're in the 5,000 bracket, it's $1,300. Under 100 surprises me. That's a really high number, $81.
Well, my guess also too there is they're trying to figure out how to do it. That's always going to be
experimenting.
Yeah, exactly. They're trying to figure out what works, and also not just what works, but how to make things work. Because there's always a learning curve.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. I wish they had a top of the over 10,000, because in terms of like their income, because if it also includes people who make $20,000 a month in income, if they're spending $4,500, that's a pretty good, like proportion versus $4,500 for just 10,000. Because I'm just like comparing, like proportion wise, if I'm making 5,000 and I'm only spending 1,362, and I'm making 10,000 and spending 4,500 a month, then I would say the person doing 5,000 is actually doing it better.
Right. Yeah.
Which is why I wonder, like, how many of the respondents that have over 10,000 a month in income are significantly higher than 10,000. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it has to be that. It has to be that, because this is about half of everybody. Everybody here is about 50% of what they're at. So, you know.
Well, I mean, but if you look at like the 1,000, if you take it from the smallest number, the smallest number of the range, like for 500, they're doing a little over half. Yeah. For 1,000, they're doing a little under half. For 5,000, they're doing like a third.
Yeah.
So like the 5,000 to 10,000 are much more effective. And I think that indicates, again, it's a learning curve. And as you make more money, you learn better what works for you. I'm sorry. I nerd out on shit.
No. This is totally, I wonder, with that 5,000, how many of those are in person?
Sure.
Because that would be word of mouth advertising. You wouldn't spend any money on it. I mean, I don't think you would account that as part of the marketing.
And I think also when you get to that highest tier, maybe you don't want to do in-person events as often. You don't need to. If I'm bringing in 10 grand a month, I don't need to go to conventions if I don't have to.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I would go to conventions to have fun at them instead of work.
So they do a thing where they ask for comments and things of that nature, and they mentioned here, after reading hundreds of responses, the vibe is hopeful but tired, hopeful but tired, motivated but overwhelmed, committed but facing a lot of uncertainty. Common themes were marketing fatigue. It's hard, it's expensive, and I'm not sure it works. Algorithm plus platform fatigue. Things change constantly. It's so hard to keep up. And loneliness. It feels like it's just me and my keyboard. But also optimism. Authors are proud of their books, and many are seeing results, and there's a strong desire to keep going.
I love that.
Yeah. So that encompasses the author survey.
Go authors. Go with your bad selves.
Yeah. Thank you to Written Word Media for putting that all together and doing that every year. And we love breaking it down and nerding out about it. So,
we're such nerds.
Maybe they are all
going though to the cons. Yeah, and it's also possible. Yeah. It's also possible that they're doing bigger events and things like that. I agree. I agree, Anita.
So, yeah. All right. Well, let's take a little break here and have a quick marketing tip, and then
I always look forward to these.
Jump out of here and say goodnight. But here you go. Here's a monthly marketing tip for you.
Hey guys, CO Cannon here from Fiction Atlas Press, bringing you another monthly marketing tip. Today I'm going to go over a marketing tip of old, but it's one that's still very relevant. It involves a marketing mistake that I see many authors, both veterans and newbies, making. I'm talking about sharing dirty book links. And no, I'm not talking about spicy books. I'm talking about all the ways that authors share the URL of their book with others. Ever done to share a link for something just to paste it into social media somewhere and see a jumble of numbers and letters that's like 10 miles long, like CVS receipt links long? Chances are you shared a dirty link. What makes this link dirty and far too long to not get truncated almost everywhere that you share it is it is filled with tracking data. Tracking data tells the host website where a user found this particular bit of content or their product. It can also tell them when, from where, what search terms were used to find it, and a whole host of other specifics. I'm going to show you how to strip tracking data from your book links so the URLs that you share with others are safe. Sharing book links with tracking data, which we call dirty links, can have serious consequences, from rank stripping to full-on account closure. So, this is important knowledge that you'll want to use every single time you share your book. Tracking data varies in format from website to website, but a good rule of thumb for Amazon is to delete everything after the ASIN number in your URL. That alone will be sufficient for most purposes, but I usually go a step further and delete everything between amazon.com/ and the /DP, or sometimes it'll be /GP. It's according on where you're using it and how you got to the product in the first place. But that's the way to get the most pared down, clean version of your link. You can see how long and out of control this Amazon book link is right now. And here's how it looks when I'm done. Most other sites look for the question mark in the URL and delete everything that comes after it. It's also important to note that even if you use a URL shortener like bit.ly, books to read, BookFunnel, or Genius Link, the link that you feed into that site still needs to be clean. Feeding those tools a dirty link further corrupts the tracking data appended to the final URL, and it kind of defeats the purpose of using the link shortener in the first place. Here are just a few advantages of using a clean link. Links that are clean, short, and to the point have a higher click rate, simply because users trust them more than an extra long link with random numbers and symbols. Why wouldn't they? They're also looked at more kindly by most social media algorithms, which heavily throttle the reach of posts that have very long links in them. They also predicate long links, which can lead to broken links when that content is shared, and it can cost you valuable clicks. If you're using paid ads, extra tracking data can also corrupt the analytics that you use to learn about your readers. That introduces false information into the facts that you have about them, and it could potentially increase or waste your ad spend. By using a clean format, you can actually future-proof the links that you share. Tracking systems change often, and using a link that includes deprecated parameters can lead to broken links and missed opportunities. And one of the really important benefits is that you won't be flagged for rank or search manipulation, and you won't have your book ranking stripped or lose your publishing account entirely, which I think is a pretty good reason to take a few minutes to clean that link. Okay, that's my marketing tip for February. I hope it helps you clean up your act and share your link the safe way. As always, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about today's marketing tip or marketing in general. You can email me at info@fiction-atlas.com with your questions, or check me out on the websites that I have listed below. I hope you have a lovely month, and I will see you next time. Bye.
Thank you, CL Cannon, for that. Any way
Thank
she can
you,
get
C-
6 of crows on the screen is so that she does it. So
Thank you, CL Cannon. Oh, I hate it when people even like in chat, like, hey, send me the link to that thing that you found, and then you get like 15 lines, and it's like, dude, clean that shit up, man.
yeah, and a lot of article, we get a lot of article links that are so long. And they're to blame for that. They need to learn how to clean up their article links a little bit better.
Agreed.
But something amazing happened yesterday, Venessa, and I'm not talking about the Seattle Seahawks winning a championship. But
were you talking about Bad Bunny?
At that game last night, we had a halftime show for the ages with, get this, the highest grossing independent artist of all time. That is all politics aside, for the first time in the history of the biggest watched event, the biggest name
in the US
in there, and he is completely 100% independent. His label, his choices, he is not bowed to the corporate knee once, and that is why I think this is a significant moment in American history as much as the political aspect of it matters as well. Because
I love it.
Because you can be at that level as an independent, and if the survey proved anything, it is that there are people out there doing that.
And he actually said that at one point. He looked in the camera and he said, basically, you can do this. I'm here because I was able to. You can be able to, and believe in yourself because I believe in you.
And I think that's the perfect note to end our show on tonight. Thank you. Thanks always to Venessa. Thank you to the chat for a wonderful aspect. And if you're watching this after the fact, please leave your comments about the survey. We'd love to hear what you think about the survey and the things that have come to light about it. And I will bring those up to Written Word Media, and hopefully they'll utilize it in some of their marketing later on. But that being said, it's always time to go indie now. We'll see you again soon.
It is.
Bye, everybody.